All right, it's your man DJ Seiko, part of the Fly Guy, alongside my brethren.
Bergen here. Bergen here.
All
Fly,
right,
one of the fly guys.
one of the Fly Guys, and we have another fly gentleman hanging with us today. He's going to introduce himself in just a minute. Burton and I got a chance to hang out with this young man a few days ago, and he shared some great inspiration and some great guidance, some great thought, some great faith with us. And we get a chance to share that with you today on the Fly Guy Show, where we do everything on the fly in such a fly manner. So,
That's
Bert,
right.
man. All right, Brother Burnell, man, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into the meat of the story.
Well, I just would like to thank you guys for welcoming me to your Fly Guy show. And I'll put my Fly Guy persona on. So instead of guys running in deuces, you'll run in trays tonight. And I'll be the third man on board. So it's a pleasure to be with you guys tonight. You said something earlier, and I think I had an opportunity to talk with Bert about this after you left our time together, Seiko. I tend to believe that the gift on my life, I'm approaching 60, and the gift on my life is not to go around trying to just inspire people.
Okay.
Gift on my life is to see if I can identify what's in a person that causes them to aspire to greatness. Too many people are inspirational artists. We've got inspiration through music. We've got inspiration through dialogue. Money inspires people. People go to church every Sunday. Sermons inspire people. And what I tend to find out from inspiration is like water. But if there's no seed where that water is being poured, then you won't ever see anything grow where you have poured your inspiration on. So my whole approach to working and building what I would consider to be the core of an individual's life is that I want to see if I can identify what cause or will cause them to aspire. What is that aspiration that is inside of a person's life? So when they meet a Seiko or they meet a Bert and they happen to have one of these unique moments in life where when they open up their mouth, inspiration comes out. Well, when inspiration joins aspiration, then facilitation begins to happen in that particular person's life. So there are a lot of people go around running from place to place to place looking for inspiration. But I want you to know something. The Bible says that the word of God, it was given and it is inspired by God to be profitable. But what it goes on to say, it needs doctrine. That word doctrine is teaching. It needs somebody that has something in their lives that creates a volume, a canon of work, that the only thing that's missing to that work is the energy that inspiration can give them. And once they get that inspiration, then they can take their aspirations and then they can go on into life to create the kind of things in life that life would have to offer them. So I'm hoping tonight I can be able to share with you what's in my life, because I'm believing that somebody will hear it or you will hear it and see it. It may allow that aspiration that's lying inside of you to become energized and ignited. And it's almost as what Bert said, man, when we talked about that building, something just began to go on in me, and I couldn't even sleep for thinking about that building. Well, I believe That's what my life is about. I don't want you to sleep after you've had a chance to talk to me, because I up until you're able to devise a strategy, find experts that becomes tactical in your life, until you can launch some type of operation and have it to go forth, until you begin to see the results of an effective life. There are a lot of people busy, but they're still yet not yielding fruit. They're not seeing good outcomes with their busy. So a man that fails to plan is a man that plans to fail. So I'll just go ahead and talk a little bit about me.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fair. I think that's fair, though, Seiko. I think that's fair. After that airful, he needs to qualify himself. Why are you qualified? Why should we listen to you? I think that's important. What do you think?
I just want to breathe. I tell you, our podcast tonight is going in a totally different direction than any of our other podcasts. So I don't have to have my coffee tonight.
When you have a farmer and they are loaded with seed, all they've got to do is find fertile soil and just start throwing seed there, because that seed will land in what I call a prepared place. See, there are too many encounters in life when opportunity shows up, it doesn't find a prepared place. So again, you have this commingling again, where one is prepared. When opportunity comes, here comes access, doors open, egress or ingress is able to be taken advantage of, and before you know it, what you've been praying for all your life, it now has just come into fruition, because you didn't just pray, you went about preparing yourself, and then when opportunity came, you seized that moment. So it's important that everybody understands, every collection that we live according to our lives, it becomes a canon of work. It becomes a volume of our lives. And if we learn as we live, then we'll be able to lead others into a more what I call wealthy place, because our experiences are supposed to yield knowledge. That knowledge, when it's spoken, it would be spoken as wisdom. And when wisdom is heard, it's instructions to you, so that you don't have and experience what I experienced. My instructions, that's really wisdom in my life, that's being given to you. When you just follow it and walk in it, you won't have to experience the hardship, the affliction, the mishaps, the mistakes. You'll be able to, with precision, skillfully, you'll be able to walk into that particular goal or target or aim or purpose of life that you have for yourself. So I sit here today probably as one that can say, I'm a volume of work here. I'm a canonized of a person. You know how the book says, when you read the Bible, it's 66 books and it's supposed to be a canonized work. When you open it up, it breathes on you. It begins to pour of the wealth of its millennials, all of the years that the works of the writers that they've lived, they've placed it in that one book called the Bible. Well, somewhere in the Bible, it says we should become living epistles read amongst all men. So tonight, you're going to get an opportunity to hear this life read to you. And that's all I want to do. I want to cause these words to be alive and active and powerful and moving so that we can get where we've got to get. Because I believe somebody is going to not only be in aspire, it's going to hit that aspiration in their lives, because too many people are counting themselves out because of their past, because of their history, because of where they were born, because of the things that they did not have, or because of the hardships that they had to experience, because of the broken families that they've come from, or the ghettos or the projects. But I'm kind of like the enigma of the moment. I'm one that can sit down and not be afraid to talk about my journey in life.
Let's do that. Let's connect some dots.
Hampered into where I am. So I hail out of New Orleans, born and raised in New Orleans, had a life in the Lafitte projects that oftentimes one would say growing up in the late 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, and in New Orleans, it was a time when you found a large population of African Americans living in what we called projects, or if they didn't live in the project, they lived a block or two outside of the projects. But the projects were, for me, my formidable years. We grew up in a home where we had a mother and a father, and they took us to church, but yet our environment took us an entirely different way. And this might be good for the people who get to hear this. I don't care what you can put in your children while they're growing up in your home. When they go outside of those doors, they're going to land in an environment. And except you're able as parents to measure your input in their lives as they go and come in and out of your house, the environment will be shaping your child as much as what you thought you were shaping them. So growing up in the Lafitte projects, my environment began to shape me. I was starting to find myself doing drugs, selling drugs, in all kinds of nefarious activities. As I was sharing with you, we were a part of the Cuban connection when all of the Cubans were starting to come into America in the mid-70s, and they were coming with all kinds of drugs, all kinds of things that eventually landed in many of the projects and if I would use the term ghetto places. I was a part of that. I was very interested in that. I was the A and the B student, and more A's than B's. I would go to school, play sports, and then I would come home and become a product of my environment. My environment had everything in it. We had pimps, we had prostitutes, we had gamblers, we had dolphins, we had drug dealers, we had kleptomaniacs, we had doctors, we had lawyers, we had community activists. Our community was rich in everything. We lacked nothing, whether it was good or bad. We had the school teachers that were there to somewhat parent you, if it was in a fathering way, in a paternal way, or if it was in a mothering way or a maternal way. We just had a whole village, because I found out, for me, it was going to take the whole village to raise this man here, because mama and daddy, once they went to work or went wherever they went, and when I went outside, I learned that my environment became very, very consumed in my life. So I became a part of the drug scene. I became a major part of the drug scene. I had shoe boxes of $100 bills from the floor to the ceiling, filling up the closets. I had so much money that I wouldn't even care about counting the money. I just used it as I needed it. I had posses. I had families that I provided for. We had racks and rooms filled with Uzi machine guns and Tech Nines and snub nose we had every kind of gun you could imagine. We had an artillery closet, and yet we understood. You all would term your podcast tonight. We thought we were the fly. We wore at 16, 17, 18. I wore $1,000 shoes, $500 belts. My chains. I had solid gold chains. I mean, it wasn't hollow. It wasn't plated. It was solid gold. We had everything that you can imagine. I drove Peugeots. At one time, you wouldn't even find a black person with a foreign car like that. We drove the best of the best. We did everything. We had the kind of females that we wanted, and we got to do whatever we want to do with them. And life for me was a growing stage. I had to find my way, what I would call a maze. It was very, very difficult. You saw people losing their lives. You saw people being locked up in jail. Somehow, my mother had three staples. One was community service. The other one was education. And the third tenet was faith. Those were three things that my mom preached to her 11 children on a routine basis, on a daily basis. She would give everything she had to take care of somebody in our community. Our homes, we lived in 3-bedroom apartments, and we could find 30 or 40 people living in that house because my mom took everybody in. If you needed a meal, you needed a place to sleep, if you needed somebody to comfort and care for you, that's the kind of house we grew up in. That was not a normal kind of household, but it was facilitated with a whole lot of action. It was always something going on in my home. And then yet when I went out into my community, because of the hustle and bustle in the house, I left out into the community ready to wheel and deal. As I said, we went to the church. That was our faith component. I would go through elementary school, junior high school, senior high school, and then on to Xavier University, president of the Business Guild, and I was one of the leading academics in the business department, where I had accomplished a business administration degree with economic emphasis. And yet I would go to this Judeo-Christian school, and then I would come back home into the projects and arm up, strap up, get my drugs, get my guys, and we do what we did.
All right, well, but did you ever bring your faith into your thuggery?
My faith never came into my thuggery. I believe my destiny was always in my thuggery, and that was why I never got caught and went to jail. That was why I never was shot and had to go to a hospital. I never was in any kind of situation, quote unquote, that I would say I felt that I could not get out. Now, I told you all some things that happened to me a time or two that sure, it was life or death kinds of moments. But you see, when you play in the drug world, when you're in the drug game, you've got to understand that any moment, at any time, you might have to take a life, or your life might be taken. Anytime you may be caught and have to be locked up in somebody's paddy wagon or in their police transport vehicle and hauled off somebody's jail. And that was something we did on a routine basis. We lived prepared such that we would not have to have these kinds of fates. We had a system of operation. You see, you can't do drugs at the level that I did drugs and there not be a highly systemized kind of approach to this, because if it's not systemized, you lose your life, you have your drugs taken or stolen from you. There are just too many fates that you can experience if you don't run a system. Now, where did that system come from? I believe it had a whole lot to do with the kind of person I was. I was always a thinker. I was always a person that thought it was better to think your way into something rather than just to get in it. Because if you think your way into it, you know you have to have a plan to get out of it. And that's pretty much how I rode for those 27, 28 years while I was growing up in New Orleans. But at one time, it came to Seiko and Bert where I was caught in a 2-week drug war. People were getting shot. All of my activities were being shut down because it was a turf battle. And the monies that we were getting out of these communities, we were not ready to yield. And it wasn't our communities. We were expanding our base into these places. And I found myself in a 2-week war, and people started being shot and things began to happen. And finally, I began to listen to said, Burnell, if you leave, then maybe the war will end because it's you that they really want. So I took that advice, and for about 60 days, I found myself in Texas. And I lived there for a while, but I couldn't make it because that thing was in me. I needed the action. By this time, I had graduated from Xavier University. I had worked in the financial industry. And this is another thing. I was working, making good money, but yet I was still the drug man. I was still the fly guy. All of those things. And my faith, it wasn't something I was practicing. It was that which that was covering me. I oftentimes say, it was my mother's prayer. It was that 23rd Psalm being prayed 4 o'clock in the morning, that if you went into my mom's home 4 o'clock in the morning, she was on her knees and she was quoting out, "The Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. And he makes me to lie down in green pastures. And he leads me beside the still waters. And he restores my soul for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through he leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valleys of the shadows of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thy prepared a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thy anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. My mother prayed that prayer every day, and yet I went out there being scandalous. Now, my morals were right. I didn't look to steal from anybody. I never set up anybody to be robbed. I never was crooked with anybody. I ran a very, very straight ship. I was a straight shooter. I didn't take anything from anybody, but I wasn't going to allow anybody to take anything from me. By the time I came to where I was really ready to say, I'm out of this thing, I had a cocaine habit. I had a speedball habit. I would take heroin and cocaine and mix it and snort it. And then when we started freebasing, I was free. Got a job with AFES, Army Air Force Exchange Service, and became an accountant with them. And my habit wouldn't allow me to keep the job because I had a habit. I couldn't keep it. The law began to look for me in Texas, and I left there and came back to New Orleans. And this is something that you've got to understand about a history of life. I left New Orleans because they were looking to kill me. I went to Dallas, Texas, and began to take the military, the government stuff for my habit, and they were looking to jail me. I was a man that in one place they were trying to jail me, in another place they were trying to kill me. I got back to New Orleans, and when they found out, everything ramped up again. So I went into Atlanta, and this is in 84, 85. I'm in Atlanta, and I'm trying to get myself right. Atlanta hadn't become the Atlanta that it is now. I landed on Cleveland Street on the south side of Atlanta, Fulton County, and then I moved over to Peachtree, Dunwoody on the north side of Atlanta. And I found a job working with a company called Peachtree Software. That's when they were attempting to produce what we would call automated accounting systems. And this was for a small business that they would be able to have software that they could load on computers, and they could move all of their accounting work to the computers. Well, because I have a background in accounting, then I was the one seeing all of the software to make sure that it was able to perform the way it was supposed to perform in the industry of accounting software.
All
but
right.
Yet,
I need to let that marinate. And by the way, we have 10 minutes left. Oh man. So all of that happened, and now you are where? I mean, as of right now.
there in 60 seconds, because that's where I'm going. That's where I'm. I get in this wonderful company, but I got a habit, so I blow that. And one day, I'm driving down the street, got the crack pipe in my hand, and I'm driving, and I wrapped my car around a pole, an electrical pole. And I pull out my snug note, and I put it up to my head, because now I'm suicidal. I've gone through ridiculous kind of money. I've gone through a lifestyle that I can't even face, that I don't live anymore, in terms of money and fashions and automobiles and luxury. And now I'm sitting in a car ready to kill myself. And I don't know if you all remember these big phones. I had these big cell phones, and I had that in the car. And when I wrecked my car, I dialed my mom in New Orleans, and I said, "Hey, Mom, this is Burnell. I just called to tell you bye." And she screams, hangs up the phone, and my phone rings, and it's my sister in Chesapeake, Virginia. This is a Saturday morning. I had a ticket at Greyhound bus station for a 6:30 Greyhound bus ride to Norfolk, Virginia. I landed in Norfolk, Virginia at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and walked outside of that bus station, and I looked around this town, And this is what I said to myself. I have finally died, because the place I'm in right now, it looks like Mayberry. I've never seen a town that is so quiet, so still, nothing moving. I looked across the street and I saw this building, which I now know is the Scope, but it has these legs and arms coming off of it, holding it up. And I'm like, what and where in the world am I? And from that time, my sister pulls up with her family, comes to meet me, gives me a hug, asks me, where's my luggage? Yes. And I held up 2 plastic hefty trash bags. And I said, this is my luggage right here. And my sister and I together, when she saw those trash bags, we cried, because she knew what my life now had come to. And we got in her car, and she took me to her home in Chesapeake, Virginia, in the Greenbrier section. And this April the 23rd, from April 23rd, 1989 to May 11th, 89, I was suicidal, didn't want to live. And every day I would wake up after the children would go to school and the parents, my sister and her husband, would go to work. I would come into their great room and lie on the floor. And I would just lie still, because I was asking the Lord, either take my life or give me life. And on May 11th, 1989, I was lying on my sister's floor. And the power of God hit me while I was lying on that floor, face down. And I knew it was God, but it broke everything. It broke the addiction. It broke the suicidal spirit. It broke everything. Look, and this is why I tell people about church. See, as people would say, you know, they got saved in church, or they went to church to get saved. See, I couldn't go to church to get saved. I needed a real God in my life. I needed a real experience with God. God had to show up for me. Everything about my life is real. It wasn't mysterious. It wasn't a pseudo life. I can't live in the surreal moment. I've got to live the real moment. And I was hit with the power of God on that floor. Got up off of that floor, and that's when I started going to church with my sister. It was Pleasant Grove, a little church on the corner in Virginia Beach. And that's where I met my wife. Married my wife. Put my family together. Helped the church. Got the $1 million from Sovereign Bank, because I was the only accountant in the church that knew how to handle books. They didn't even have financial statements. God will put you in the right place at the right time, so that the right thing can begin to happen with the life that he has preserved from the days of your past. I was so sheltered, not by my parents. I was sheltered by the hand of God. Nobody could take my life. Nobody could wound my life. Nobody could stop what God had in store for me, even when I wasn't even conscious of purpose. I didn't even know what purpose was according to my life. But now I'm starting to, at this time in 1990, I'm starting to walk in my purpose now. This is 27 years ago. I'm starting to walk in my purpose. So I get married. My church wants to build, but they don't even have financial statements. And guess what happens? My past my past training comes to fruition. And I told Daryl Scott, who's deceased now, I said, Pastor Scott, I can put this thing together and let's go get this money. You want to build a church, and God is my witness. We went to the Sovereign Bank. Sue Fox Davis was the bank manager. She took those records I had put together. They had all of the other little plans for the building, and we got $933,000 to build Pleasant Grove Baptist Church. It's sitting right there at the foot of Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. A wonderful ministry center. The Lord used a kid from New Orleans, from the projects, that ran dope, that did everything you could imagine, but yet went and got an education, and then finds himself in Chesapeake and Virginia, sitting in a church, advancing the kingdom of God in such a way that you could not even imagine. 2 years later, I become licensed to do ministry, and that became the role of my life. Today, I sit here as a bishop, having consecrated 15 bishops. I've built one of the biggest church centers in the city of Chesapeake, Virginia Beach. You call it whatever you want to call it. 52,000 square feet. The building appraised at $12 million. Never went into it for one day, but I can tell you one thing. I'm a builder. I'm a visionary. I'm somebody that take God serious. And that's why I can't play games with life anymore. I can't play games with people's lives, and I can't play the games that preachers play, that take pulpits and deal with people's lives the way they deal with them. I can't sleep with other men's wives or other women that find themselves being drawn to me because I'm a charismatic preacher.
You know what?
I can't roll